Hey, Bob, welcome back to our next session of the space between.
I wonder if you and I might pick up talking about, as we've been talking about, of kind of burnout and work-life balance and that kind of whole domain as it relates to life, recovery specifically for you and me, and it might be relevant for others. Is that of interest to you, Ian?
Yeah, I think so. And that picks up from our last couple of discussions around, you I think I used the phrase in our pre-recording conversation, the recovery wheel, and what
Yeah,
we're doing to look
yeah,
after ourselves. Because burnout for me in recovery, I know that I'm burning out, I'm relapsing. As you were pointing out earlier, I'm life's no longer pleasurable, recovery is no longer pleasurable, so I'll go out there and seek pleasure.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then in my addiction, in the addict's personality or mine, there's nothing more pleasurable than taking drugs and alcohol.
Right.
It's a dopamine hit with a rush. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I did something yesterday that's related to the conversation overall. I have this thing I've done since graduate school is I create a calendar of my week and I look at how I divvy up time between work and what I think of as non-task oriented stuff. So I
Yeah.
include in the work I do professionally as well as all the work that goes into managing a household, everything from doing the laundry to buying groceries, cooking, all of that. And what I realized is that I'm almost embarrassed to say it because it's recording, but it's true for me. You know that I get up early. I get up at 5 every morning here in the US. And I've been thinking I spend 2 hours of alone in the morning, 1 hour in what I think of as quiet time, another hour in my exercising, in which I'm listening to audiobooks. These are all things that feed me. And then I realized, no, what I missed there is actually 3 hours.
Yeah.
Because the third hour is driving to and from the gym. And while I'm doing that, I continue to do my forgiveness practice, gratitude practice, and memorize poetry. And one might look at that as a little bit obsessive. The fact is, it's so thoroughly enjoyable for me. So whether it's obsessive or not, I love reciting inspiring poetry. This morning I was working with poetry from the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, and
Yes. Yeah.
I'm
Beautiful.
driving along, I'm reflecting on it, and so it makes driving enjoyable. Now, I'm in no way saying that my reciting poetry gives me the same dopamine rush that the combination of alcohol and other drugs I was using did. But I do know this is that if I do alcohol and other drugs, I won't be able to access the pleasure that come from doing Lao Tzu poetry. And that's become so fundamental to it's my value system as well as my enjoyment, as well as kind of setting the tone for every day in terms of kind of a spiritual foundation. So I'm kind of selfish. I don't want to give up those 3 hours in the morning, and I would be effectively doing it. If I started drinking and drugging today, it would effectively wipe that out tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And something's happened for me over the years where I'm stingy about giving up my quiet time in the morning.
Yeah, that's right. It's a payoff, isn't it? Yeah. I'm thinking about that drive towards pleasure and what are the pleasurable activities in our life that become more, as you're just describing them, become more pleasurable than the short-term pleasure of drugs and alcohol. Because my experience of the short-term pleasure of drugs and alcohol, that in the background of that, just waiting in the background, is misery. So I have to keep repeating the same ritual of taking drugs and alcohol to fend off the misery of my life.
Yeah.
And for me, that's a spiraling down.
Yeah. 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 I've just finished two books here recently. These are both audiobooks. So, in full confession, I'm listening to the books, not reading them. I guess it still counts as reading a book. I don't know. The first book is a book that last time I read it was about 15 years ago. I read it right before I got into recovery, ironically. It's a book by Martin Seligman, the American psychologist. His book, Authentic Happiness. I went back and re listened to that. And that
Positive
inspired,
psychology, yeah.
yeah, it inspired me to read another book that's written much more recently by a British psychologist, Daniel Nettle, and the book is simply called Happiness. And in both books, which are about happiness, and they're both research-oriented books, so these are not like kind of pop psych fluff. It's really based in a ton of research that's been done on what makes people happy. I'm finishing right now a third book by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, the author of Flow. I'm reviewing, this is the third run through of his book on creativity. So let me add him to the mix too. Martin Seligman, Daniel Nettle, and Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, all three of them are saying that when Bob and Ian drink and do drugs, that there's an undeniable pleasure that comes in that. But all three of them, using different language, make a distinction between what you and I might call pleasure and what leads to happiness, because all three of them have studied happiness. And the one thing, and you know this from the 12-step program, I learned it there as well, is that happiness has much more to do with our contributing to others, somehow doing something meaningful for the sake of not only ourselves, but for others. That's people that are happy tend to be able to do that. They do things, they're enjoyable in and of themselves because it provides meaning or purpose or value. That said, drugs and alcohol don't do that. It'd be very hard to say that I mean, you could say it, but it'd be an idiosyncratic perspective. I'll say that when I was doing drugs and alcohol, I probably said, this is the meaning of my life. I don't know if I said that or not, but it's a pretty shallow veneer. It's like, okay, that's great, Bob. Can you say a little bit more about meaning? And so if we really want to be happy or contented, it doesn't matter what language you use for this, it's going to be a different route than momentary pleasures. With all due respect to momentary pleasures within reason, I like eating a good meal. I enjoy sexual intimacy. I enjoy music. All of those things are pleasurable, but for them to really lead to a sense of happiness requires a deeper dive, it seems like to me. Now I want to check and see if this resonates for you, Ian. Yeah.
Absolutely. What's resonating from my head at the moment is that song "Fine Line Between Passion and Pain." Yeah, it's a fine line.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you
That's well.
know, I look back and I think of how I used drugs and alcohol originally was to have fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, young and rebellious, and I remember going out and purposely looking for someone who had dope,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I could experience that, and same with acid and different
Yeah.
other chemicals. But that there was a lot of fun in that, just the experimenting, the age. But then I got on the treadmill of addiction, and there was no way off. And that pleasure
Yeah.
certainly turned into pain fairly quickly. Yeah? That downward spiral. And what's that old saying in addiction? Chasing the dragon. Didn't matter how hard I chased the dragon, I I couldn't catch up. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and then to pick it up, when I go into early recovery, or I make the decision, or the decision's made for me through some type of spiritual awakening or experience, and I decide, and the desire to drink's taken away because that's my story. There's a whole lot of pain in early recovery. So people in early recovery watching this going, "Oh, it's all right. You guys have been around for a while, and you can talk about the pleasures." But I do remember the earliness of not having that the substance to fulfill me. Yeah, and I'm just left with me. And we talk about recoveries, and the recovery wheel, and I like that concept. And it is, well, what are we doing in each area of the wheel, and is it pleasurable? Because if it's not pleasurable, I'm not going to keep doing it. Yeah, it's like I don't like the gym so much anymore. So if someone said, well, the key to good recovery is to go and smash some weights 3 times a week, that'll be a chore for me. at my age, it'd be like, take me back into my 20s and maybe I could do that. So I need to have those pleasurable processes in my life.
Yeah.
That's what I start thinking about when we start talking about, you know, creating things in recovery, or creating things in life which are meaningful for us. And that's where we were last week, I think, when we were talking.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've done kind of a crazy thing. You make me think of it with your last comment about the gym. At the onset of COVID, I stopped going to the gym. I've enjoyed working out in some form or fashion most of my life. Well, it's been the better part of 5 years, and I'm not getting younger. And so I recently started going back to the gym. It's been 5 years, and my body has aged and eroded, my muscles and all of that. And so I'd be a liar if I said, oh, what I really like doing is just sweating my behind off in a gym.
That's right.
And so what I've done is love the irony of this. I've coupled going to the gym with putting my little earphones in and listening to books about happiness.
That's right.
And because I enjoy reading psychology. I enjoy reading spirituality and, the wisdom traditions and so on. I'm combining something that I don't like, sweating my behind off, with something I do like, which is learning new things in areas that are of interest to me. And so far, I'm hanging in there. I'd be a liar to say that I'm back to where I was 5 years ago. I probably won't ever get back to that because of 5 years of aging. I'm not suggesting that you do this, but what I'm suggesting is that if there's something that one wants to do that requires some discomfort, there might be ways of coupling it. There was an American psychologist, Premack, who developed the Premack principle, and it was based on this. Take something you like doing and make your like doing it making your doing it contingent on you doing something you like less. Sorry, I had to think for a second. So if I like listening to books on happiness, which apparently I do, I'm now on my third book on it. Then in order to do that, I've got to get on a elliptical and sweat for 20 or 30 minutes. And so far, it seems to be working. Oh, it'd be like this for me as a drummer. It'd be like the discipline of developing new techniques in drumming. That's painful. It's been painful to me my entire life. It's painful, like in my brain, to coordinate things opposite of what your body naturally does. But the payoff is that I get to play jazz like I did yesterday for 3 hours with very skilled musicians, and I had an absolute blast. I was, at some point, we were playing one song, I just burst out with a whoop, like that as I was playing. It's so much fun.
Yeah. And so also there's another part in there that comes to mind is I remember being asked by my first therapist all those years ago, does it interest you?
That's a good word. It's a good word.
And if it doesn't interest you, why are you doing it? I imagine there's a lot of other things that interest you. Yeah,
that's good. That's good. That's good.
And he was also big on novelty and bringing novelty into life, and not doing the same thing in some type of habitual rut. You know?
Right.
It's that old, I think it's Jungian thing, or someone. If you're brushing your teeth with your left hand all your life, try and brush it with your right hand. Try and change. Yeah.
You remind me of a book I mentioned to you some time ago, Zen Without Zen Masters. And that book, I still remember that book very clearly. In fact, I purchased it again recently, and then I gave it away because I realized I'm not going to read it again. But it was a book. It was a book full of those exercises shaving with the non-dominant hand, driving an unusual route to work if you're used to going somewhere. And the whole theme of the book, he was framing it in terms of Zen practices, is that it's meant to wake us up from our routines. And I like you're talking about in terms of novelty. Psychology suggests that the way to sustain passion is to continue to do things newly, to introduce novelty. And I like that. I like that. I like being back to exercising after a 5-year hiatus just because it's novel. I'm doing that. I've been swimming every morning for 5 years, as you well know. Now
Yeah.
I'm lifting weights and doing the cardio work. And I'll go back to swimming when the gym begins to be monotonous.
Yeah, my gym, the one that, I say, well, I wouldn't go to the gym, and because it doesn't interest me. But what interests me is martial arts. So I'll
Yeah.
go down. So
Yeah.
I'll go down and train,
Yeah.
and be thrown down on the mats a couple of dozen times a night, and get back up, and go down again and get back up. There's my body strengthening exercise.
Yes, yes.
Sometimes in the moment I don't really enjoy it, and then there's the goal. Yeah, yeah. And I'm looking at mind at the moment around, how I create fantasies or narratives or stories or perceptions of what it's going to be like when I reach a particular goal. The summit of the mountain, and can I take in the view, or I'm looking at a higher mountain?
That's a good point. I like that.
And I've been talking to someone lately about, that's how something like, for example, martial arts is structured. You get your first dan, you don't get really time to absorb and take that accomplishment in, because now you start training for your second dan. So there's another mountain to climb. Yeah. And what I'm part of my practice is to stay, around the whole pleasure thing. I was going to say the pleasure principle, but that's already been used somewhere else before. Around the pleasure thing, yeah. Can I stay still long enough to appreciate what I've got, rather than to keep moving on? What's it like to get to the top of the first mountain? Or just for today, what's it like to sit here and talk to Bob? Without thinking about, that book we were talking about writing, and we get in that. No, the pleasure's here now, not some. Yeah, the pleasure's here now.
I like so much what you're saying. It's a dynamic kind of relationship, isn't it, between our enjoying being here like we are right now with one another, and having goals or aspirations to possibly, for example, to possibly write a book together, and to hold both of those, to earn a certain belt in martial arts, and really, I like your word, absorb that, and also look forward to the next challenge, to hold both of those. And I think sometimes it's a dynamic tension between those. I just shared with you earlier a conversation I'm having with our friends John about writing a book. I don't want that conversation, as I told you, I don't want that conversation about writing a book together to take away the joy of my being with you right now. I don't want to be so preoccupied by writing a book that I don't get to enjoy being with Ian.
And I think our relationship over the years, that's one of the deeper learnings I've taken out of our relationship, is to, just trying to square myself up on that, is, to get carried away. Here I am talking to, I think we met on the Vitality Project. We did meet on the Vitality Project, and things have morphed and moved and morphed and moved till we're sitting here now having our own conversation. Yeah? And there has been talk about books and whatever it is. And what I'm saying, the learning in our relationship for me, and it's been big for me, is to be able to drop all the expectations, all the preconceived ideas of where this friendship could take me. and just have the friendship. And I think, that life of striving, or that accumulating, or I think the Buddhists, what they call it, grasping, just to be really clear with myself about what is it I'm doing here. I find pleasure in our relationship. I find pleasure in what we're doing. Yeah?
Yeah.
We may be putting this up on the internet as a podcast, but it can sit there. If people want to have a look at it, they have a look at it. If they don't want to have a look at it, they don't look at it. But the important part for me is not how many people are looking at our podcast, it's the interaction itself. And it's a huge learning for someone like me who's a little bit ADD and is always looking for the next shiny thing, is to be able to wind back a bit and just be with what I've got. Within addiction, I think that's a really hard road to travel as well in recovery.
Kind of circles back to what you were saying earlier, wasn't it, about being able to enjoy our lives as they are right now, rather than always looking for a new, I like your new shiny object, a new high. I'll tell you what's in the back of my mind as I listen to you. This morning, as I was driving to work out, I was memorizing poetry. And here's one of the lines from this moment. It just comes to mind synchronistically. It's Lao Tzu. He says, "A good traveler has no plans and is not intent on arriving. A good artist allows his intuition to lead wherever it wants. A good scientist has freed himself of all concepts and keeps his mind open to what is." That's the whole message.
Yeah.
But I just sat with that and absorbed it and really appreciate that. Is it possible for me, while there's something to be said for plans and goals and all of that, can I also enjoy having no plans and not being intent on arriving someplace other than where we are right now? I've got a book up here that you're well familiar with. I moved my books. I'm probably not going to remember where the heck it is now. In fact, most certainly I can't. Dang it. I was going to impress you.
Oh, don't worry, Bob. I'm already impressed.
Right here.
Hang on, I put my spectacles back on. I can't read it without.
Oh, okay, yeah, there we go.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Yeah. This beautiful
nice.
book about mindfulness by John Kabat-Zinn. But is it possible wherever I go to actually be there? It's easy to say that, but what would it be to actually be here right now with you? And that for me can include our setting goals. I do hope to write a book with you one day. I even wonder if it'll be the book that we write will come out of this kind of engagement that we have. In other words, that will come out of where we are. I keep having this feeling because it keeps kind of tickling at both of our fancies, and it's not for lack of a number of, I don't want to call them false starts. I'll just say brief beginnings. But I'm confident that something will come, but it feels really good just to be here with you. What our audience may or may not know is that you and I meet every fortnight, and we start by talking for a half hour just about our lives, and then we shift gears not so much and talk about our lives. I love the way that we are together.
Yeah, the only difference is, I think, in the second half hour we protect the innocent.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So,
which is a nice boundary. Anyhow, I remember having not conversations on the internet, but having conversations, and I was nowhere near protecting the innocent.
Yeah. The same for me. It's been a learning curve around that for sure.
And for the people who wonder who the innocent is, we have we have personal conversations about where our recovery is at, where our lives are at, where our relationships are at, and out of that rich conversation for the first half hour, we then turn on the recorder and bring it into the podcast, and we leave the innocent behind in the last half hour and just bring the concept forward.
Yeah, I feel like we do that. I think it feels wonderful to be able to share about those that we care about, our relationships with friends, our partners, and so on. And I've also appreciated your being careful about our bringing them in because of how it can go with the internet now. So there's a way that I think we bring the spirit of our earlier. I don't feel some radical distinction between our earlier conversation and this one. It's the same Ian and Bob. I like that a lot. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I think the transition is just, I noticed this morning the transition was just the introduction. Here we are again.
Yeah. And one of us has to press a red button.
That's right.
Ian, I'm aware that I have to wind down. I have to shift over in just a minute. I want to give you the last word here, and then I'm gonna press the red button again to say this, and God willing, we'll be able to get it out to the masses. We'll see you in a fortnight, dear friend. It's great to see you, Ian. Blessings to you. You take good care, okay?